So to continue with the same video, children, as I told you that the bleeding that is coming out of the vagina through cervix is including the ruptured endometrium plus the egg and the blood vessels present. So you see, menstruation occurs if the released ovum is not fertilized. It results in the breakdown of endometrium lining and uterine blood vessels that comes out to vagina. Even the egg is also wasted out or thrown out in the in this process of menstruation. Now, if lack of menstruation is there, if suppose there is no menstruation, that may indicate pregnancy, but it doesn't mean that every time if the woman is not undergoing menstruation cycle she is pregnant. There could be many other causes also because of which there is no menstruation, like stress or poor health, or some hormonal imbalances also may occur due to which the menstruation is not occurring. Now let's see, it starts from the fifth day after the menstruation and complete within 8 to 12 days. Now this is the follicular or proliferative phase, which starts from the fifth day and is completed within 8 to 12 days depending upon person to person. In this phase, action of gonadotropin, we have studied gonadotropin hormones FSH and LH. So FSH and LH are the ones which are actually taking part in this phase. So in this phase, action of gonadotropins which are secreted by the pituitary occurs. FSH, now children see FSH, what is the role of FSH here? FSH stimulates development of primary follicle into Graafian follicles. As you all know that primary follicle gets matured into secondary, then secondary gets matured into tertiary, and from tertiary it gets matured into a Graafian follicle, which is the mature follicle. So all these developments are actually based on the secretion of FSH, because FSH will stimulate these developments. So FSH is the one which will help or which will indicate the maturation of the follicles. Children, secretion of estrogen by Graafian follicle is also under the control of FSH, because only when Graafian follicles are formed, then only estrogen will be secreted. And who are responsible for the formation of Graafian follicles? FSH, which will stimulate the development of primary follicles. So all these two actions are actually under the command of FSH, which is secreted by pituitary, and this takes place between 5th to 13th day of the cycle. Also children, we know that estrogen, which is the female sex hormone, it stimulates proliferation of ruptured uterine endometrium and mucous lining of oviduct and vagina. It will proliferation of ruptured. Now you see the endometrium lining which was ruptured. So now the endometrium lining will be proliferated. Mucous lining of the oviduct and the vagina are also proliferated. Then estrogen is also responsible for the secondary sexual characters in females, development of breast, hairs in the pubic area and the armpits, and many other you must have studied all these secondary sexual characters in class 8th also, in 10th also. The voice, the pitch also is changed in female. So all these are secondary sexual characters which are again under the influence of the estrogen hormone. Then it also suppresses FSH secretion. That means if estrogen level is high, then FSH secretion will reduce or it will be suppressed. So this is one of the function of estrogen. Then it also helps in the secretion of LH, that is the luteinizing hormone. So you see, estrogen is responsible for so many functions. Okay. On 14th day, now this is a very important day. On 14th day, LH and FSH, both of them attain a peak level. That means both of them are highest in their secretion. Both of them are secreted at a very high level, and this is the middle of the cycle, because I told you that the cycle is almost of 28 days. So 14th day is the middle of the cycle. So at the mid of the cycle, LH and FSH are at the peak level, and rapid secretion of LH, because I told you that LH is also at peak level. So rapid secretion of LH, which is also called LH surge, induces rupture of Graafian follicle. As the LH secretion is so high, this will rupture the Graafian follicle, and as the Graafian follicle is ruptured, the ovum is released, and this process is known as ovulation, which is actually done on 14th day of the cycle, that is the mid of the cycle. Now you see, children, LH and FSH attain a peak level in the middle of the cycle, and the rapid secretion is done, and ovulation is also occurs on the 14th day. Now then comes the next phase or stage, that is secretory or luteal phase. Children, it occurs between 14 to 28 days after the ovulation is done. Now the Graafian follicle has ruptured, you see here, and the ovum is released, and the ovum which is released is in the stage of secondary oocyte. Okay, the ovulation is done. Now whatever is left behind, it gets transformed into a structure which is called corpus luteum. That is why we call this stage to be the luteal phase. So after ovulation, Graafian follicle is transformed into a yellow endocrine mass called corpus luteum. Why endocrine? Because hormone is secreted. This is the responsible for the secretion of hormone. Now children, corpus luteum will secrete a very important hormone which is called progesterone. Children, remember like this: P for progesterone, P for pregnancy, because this is the hormone which is responsible for the continuation of pregnancy or for the maintenance of pregnancy. Because if progesterone level is good, then there is no problem in the pregnancy. So let's see, what does the progesterone do? Functions of progesterone is it makes endometrium quite thick and maximum vascular, thick and soft, so that the fetus can come and attach with this endometrium lining. So this is getting ready, the uterus is getting ready, and progesterone is taking part in this this process of making the endometrium lining thick, vascular and soft. Why? So that the fetus can come and fix. So fixing of fetus into the endometrium is known as implantation. Then progesterone level also inhibits the FSH secretion. That means it stops the FSH secretion, so that to prevent the development of second ovarian follicle. Okay, now the next follicle, there are so many follicles present in the ovary. I told you, because a lady or a female, when she is born, she is carrying all her eggs with her, which she will produce in whole of her life. So when one procedure or when one egg is undergoing a procedure, then other follicles should not participate. So what will progesterone do? It will inhibit the FSH secretion, so that the next ovarian follicle is not developing at the same time when one procedure is already going on. Understood? Right? Then children, if fertilization does not occur, suppose there is no fertilization, the egg waited in the oviduct but the sperms were not there, so what will happen? The corpus luteum will degenerate. Now when the corpus luteum will degenerate, who will produce the progesterone? So the progesterone level will drop because there is no corpus luteum, so no progesterone. And if there is no progesterone, who will make the endometrium lining? Because of this, the endometrium lining disintegrates. Okay, and because it is disintegrating, then it will lead to next menstrual cycle, which is the new cycle, and it will take place after 28 days of the first or the previous cycle. Children, if fertilization does not occur, corpus luteum will degenerate and the endometrium is also degenerating, and the next menstruation period will start. During pregnancy, all the events of menstrual cycle stop and there is no menstruation. Okay, so this is all about menstrual cycle. Now there is a chart in your NCERT, this one, which is very important. Children, this chart or this graph generally comes in board exam many a times. Almost every year, either they ask you to draw the graph or they give the graph and they ask you many questions based on it. Now let's see, let's read out the graph, which is, this graph is so nicely explained that if you understand the graph and if you know how to draw the graph properly, you can write down all the events by yourself. So let's see. See children, here they have given you all the phases. Okay, the phases, and here this is the uterine events, that is what are the changes going on in the uterus. Then they have also given the ovarian hormone levels, what are the various hormones and how are the hormones changing according to their phases shown here on the x-axis. Then they have also shown you the events that are taking place in the ovary during the various phases, and also the pituitary hormone levels are also shown here. So in one graph everything is being given. Now let's see, let's start the menstruation. We all know that menstruation period starts from 1 to 5 days. Okay, so you see this is the menstruation period, and at this point of time the level of progesterone is very low, the level of estrogen is also very low, you see, and at this point of time the developing follicles are very, you see, they are very small. Let's move on to the next one. Here even the FSH and LH levels are also very low. Now let's see, after the menstruation comes the follicular phase. Now children, all of you see here the follicular phase, during the follicular phase the follicles are developing, you see, from primary to secondary, from secondary to tertiary, from tertiary to mature. Okay, and here the hormones by pituitary are also being secreted, you see, little bit hormones are also secreted. But as the ovulation has to occur on 14th day, this is the 14th day of the cycle, you see, this is the 14th day, the line, and here ovulation they have written here. During this time period the endometrium is also thick. This is the uterine event. Here the endometrium is quite thick and the level of estrogen is quite high during the ovulation, you see, but there is no progesterone. Here during the ovulation the progesterone is not there. Why? Because till now corpus luteum is not formed. See, corpus luteum तो ovulation के बाद बनता है. So till now there is no corpus luteum, so no progesterone. But the level of estrogen is high here during ovulation. Okay. Then the surge has come. This is the peak that I told you. LH surge has occurred. FSH is also highest at this point of time. LH is also highest at this point of time. And these are the events at during the ovulation everywhere. Even the pituitary hormones have been shown. Here, what happens in the ovary, it has been shown. What happened to the ovarian hormones, they are also showing here. And what is the stage of uterus or the endometrium lining, they have shown it here in the follicular phase. Then after the follicular phase, when the ovum is released, what is left over is called corpus luteum. So what will happen in the ovary? The corpus luteum is formed. Now as soon as the corpus luteum is formed, we know that the corpus luteum will start releasing progesterone. So you see the level of progesterone is highest here, and we have studied that progesterone will help in maintaining the endometrium lining. So the thickness of endometrium lining here is also quite high. You see, this is the luteal phase, but the estrogen level has dropped here. Okay, the estrogen level has dropped and the progesterone level is high, and because the progesterone level is high, the endometrium lining is also thick. Now let's see what happens above. Here the LH and FSH have dropped because of the progesterone and estrogen. You see the LH and FSH have dropped here. Both of them have dropped. Now, but if suppose there is no pregnancy, okay, the pregnancy is not there, then what will happen? Corpus luteum will degenerate. And because the corpus luteum has degenerated, the progesterone is not secreted. And if the progesterone is not secreted, you see the progesterone is dropping and the estrogen level is rising. Okay, and if the progesterone is dropping, then you can see the uterine endometrium is also getting thinner now, and then after 28 days again the menstruation will start and the menstrual cycle will occur. So this graph is very important, very important. I don't know how many times should I repeat this, that this is very important. And if you have understood the graph, you can write down all the phases by yourself. You can write down all the events. They may ask you in the exam, what will happen to the follicular phase, during the follicular phase, what will happen in the uterus? Or during the follicular phase, what will happen in the ovary hormone levels? Or during the luteal phase, what will what will happen in the ovary? Or they may ask you during the luteal phase, what will be the level of hormone of the pituitary? So everything has been explained up very nicely in this graph. So if you follow the graph, it is very easy to understand and write down about the menstrual cycle. So menarche, children, we know the first time when a female undergoes menstrual cycle during her puberty, then it is called menarche, which may occur from 11 to 12 years of age. And menopause is when the menstrual cycle stops. It is about for 50 years of age. These days it may also occur around 40 to 45 years. So these are certain reproductive phases, menarche and menopause.